Okay. Here we go. The Great Gilly Hopkins by Catherine Patterson. Other books by the author. The Master Puppeteer. Bridge to Terabithia. The Great Gilly Hopkins, Angels and Other Strangers, and Jacob I Have Loved. Or Jacob Have I Loved. This book is for Mary from her real and adopted mother with love. This chapter is called Welcome to Thompson Park. Gilly, said Miss Ellis with a shake of her long blonde hair toward the passenger in the back seat. I need to feel that you are willing to make some effort. Galadriel Hopkins shifted her bubble gum to the front of her mouth and began to blow gently. She blew until she could barely see the shape of the social worker's head through the pink bubble. This will be your third home in less than 3 years. Miss Ellis swept her golden hair to left and right, then began to turn the wheel in a cautious maneuver to the left. I would be the last person to say that it was all your fault. The Dixons have moved to Florida, for example, just one of those unfortunate things, and Miss Richmond has gone to the hospital. It seemed to Gilly that there was a long, thoughtful pause before the caseworker went on. For her nerves. Pop! Miss Ellis flinched and glanced in the rear-view mirror, but continued to talk in her calm professional voice, while Gilly picked at the bits of gum stuck in her straggly bangs and on her cheeks and chin. We should have been more alert in her condition before placing any foster children there. I should have been more alert. Creeps, thought Gilly. The woman I was getting sincere? What a pain. I'm not trying to blame you, Gilly. It's just that we all need your cooperation. If any of the arrangement is to work out. Another pause. I can't imagine you enjoy all this moving around. The blue eyes in the mirror were checking out Gilly's response. Now this new foster mother is very different from Mrs. Nevins. Gilly calmly pinched a blob of gum off the end of her nose. There was no use trying to get the gum out of her hair. She sat back and tried to chew the bit she had managed to salvage. It stuck to her teeth in a thin layer. She finished another ball of gum from her jeans pocket and scraped the lint off with her thumbnail. Without elaborately popping into her mouth. Will you do me a favor, Gilly? Try to get off in the right foot. Gilly had a vision of herself sailing around living in the living room of the foster home on her right foot like an ice skater. With her lifted up left foot, she was shoving the next foster mother square in the mouth. She smacked her new supply of gum in satisfaction. Do me another favor, will you? Get rid of that gum before we get there. Gilly obligantly took the gum out of her mouth, while Miss Ellis's eyes were still in the mirror. When the social worker turned her attention back to traffic, Gilly carefully spread the gum underneath the handle of the left-hand door as a sticky surprise for the next person who might try to open it. 2 traffic lights farther on Miss Ellis's handbag. A towelette. Here, she says, see what you can do about that guck on your face before we get here. Gilly swiped a little wet paper across her mouth and dropped it on the floor. Gilly, Miss Ellis sighed and shifted her fancy on the floor gears. Gilly, my name. Gilly said between her teeth, is Galadriel. Miss Ellis appeared not to have heard Gilly give Mimi Trotter have a chance, okay? She is a really nice person that cans it, Gilly thought. At least nobody had accused Mr. or Mrs. Nevins, her most recent foster parents, of being nice. Mrs. Richmond, the one with the bad nerves, had been nice. The Newman family, who couldn't keep a 5-year-old who wet her bed in, had been nice. Well, I'm 11 now, folks, and in case you haven't heard, I don't wet my bed anymore. I am not nice. I am brilliant. I am famous across the entire country. Nobody wants to tangle with a great Galadriel Hopkins. I am too clever, too hard to manage. Gruesome Gilly, they call me. She leaned back comfortably. Here I come, Mimi baby. Ready or not, they had reached the neighborhood of huge trees and old houses. The social worker slowed and stopped beside a dirty white fence. The house it penned was old and brown, with a porch that gave it a sort of pot belly. Hold on. Yeah, okay. Standing on the porch, before she rang the bell, Miss Ellis took out a comb. Would you try to pull this through your hair? Gilly shook her head. I can't. Oh, come on, Gilly. No, I can't comb my hair. I'm going for the Guinness World Record for uncombed hair. Gilly, for Pete's sake. Hey there, I thought. I heard you'll pull up. The door had opened. A huge hippopotamus of a woman was filling the doorway. Welcome to Thompson Park, Gilly, honey. Galadriel, I muttered Gilly. Not that she expected this bale of blubber to manage her real name. Jeez, they didn't have to put her in with a freak. Half a small face, topped with a muddy brown hair and masked with a thick metal-rimmed glasses, jutted out from behind Miss Trotter's mammoth hip. The woman looked down. Well, excuse me, honey. She put her arm out, the head as if to draw it forward, but the head resisted movement. If you want to meet our new sister, don't you? Gilly, this is William Ernest Teague. The head immediately disappeared behind Mrs. Trotter's bulk. She didn't seem bothered. Come in. I didn't mean to leave you standing on the porch like you was trying to sell me something. You belong here now. She backed up. Gilly could feel Mrs. Ellis's fingers on her backbone, gently prodding her through the doorway and into the house. Inside, it was dark and crammed with junk. Everything seemed to be needed dusting. William Ernest, honey, do you want to show Gilly where her room is? William Ernest clung into the back of Mrs. Trotter's fluttered house dress, shaking his head. Oh, well, I can't see to that later. She led them down the hallway into the living room, just sitting down and making herself at home now. She smiled across her face at Gilly, like the after in a magazine diet and a before with an after smile. The couch was brown and squat with a pile of cushions covered in a graying lace at the far end. A matching brown chair with worn arms slumped at the opposite side of the room. Gray lace curtains hung at the single window between them. and besides the window it was black tables supporting an old-time TV with rabbit ears. The Nevinsons had a color TV. On the right-hand wall between the door and the brown chair stood a black upright piano with a dusty brown bench. Gilly took off one of the pillows of the couch and used it to wipe every trace of dust off the piano bench before sitting down on it. From the brown chair, Miss Ellis was staring at her with a very non-professional glare. Miss Trotter was lowering herself onto the sofa and chuckling. "Well, we've been needing some rearranging the dust around here, ain't we, William Ernest, honey?" William Ernest climbed up behind the huge woman and lay behind her back like a bolster pillow, poking his head around from time to time to sneak another look at Gilly. She waited until Mrs. Trotter and Mrs. Ellis were talking, and then gave little W.E. the most so W.E. is the William Ernest, the most fearful face in the repertory of scary looks, sort of a cross between Count Dracula and Godzilla. The little Muddy had disappeared faster than a toothpaste cap down a sink drain. The giggled despite herself of both of the women turned to look at her. She switched easily and immediately to her. "Who? Me? Look." Miss Ellis stood up. "I need to be getting back to the office, Miss Trotter. You'll let me know." She turned to Gilly with prickles on her big blue eyes. "You'll let me know if there's any problems." Gilly favored Miss Ellis with her best miraculous smile. Meantime, Miss Trotter was laboriously lifting herself onto her feet. "Don't worry, Miss Ellis. Gilly and William Ernest and me are nearly friends already. My Melvin, God rest him, used to say that Trotter never met a stranger, and if he'd said kid, he would have been right. I never met a kid who make friends." Gilly hadn't learned yet how to vomit at will, but if she had, she would have all directly loved to throw up at that one moment. So, lacking the true perfect response, she lifted her legs and spun around to the piano, where she proceeded to bang out Heart and Soul, where her left hand chopsticks with her right. William Ernest scrambled off to the couch after two women, and Gilly was left alone in the dust. The out-of-tune piano and satisfaction that she had needed starting off the right foot in her new foster home. She could stand anything, she thought. A gross garden, a freaky kid, an ugly, dirty house, as long as she was in charge. She was well on the way. The next one is The Man Who Comes to Supper, which is actually very interesting to me. That's like one of my favorite chapters, chapter 2. So, bye!